If you've ever been following my work, you know I do not believe in accidents. Nothing happens chaotically, randomly. Everything is one beautiful synchrony. Recently, I went to a talk. I happened to be in California, and I went to a talk to hear my good friend Jude Curvin. Now, Dr. Jude Curvin lives in England, but because we couldn't meet up, we decided we'll do it in California. And she happened to do it somewhere in Northern California, and she did this talk to a small group of people following the SAND conference. And I went along and I said, hey, let me come and join you and support you. And you know what? That was one of the best decisions I made, because I met some absolutely incredible people who fulfill my dreams, because my dream, which is to be surrounded by inspiring people, people who inspire me, lift me up, who are making a difference to the people and the planet. Now, today I'm joined by two amazing people. They're authors, they're entrepreneurs, they live in Silicon Valley. Their name is Peter and Beth Bostwick. Why did you choose to become entrepreneurs?
That's an easy one. We were burnt out with what we were doing.
Right.
And it's like, we didn't want to work in the corporate world or in consulting anymore, and it was just like, they start businesses in Silicon Valley. Smart people.
What else are you going to do in Silicon Valley, right?
So let's just go back, because burnout is something which is prevalent within entrepreneurial world, certainly, but especially so in the corporate world. After how long were you working before you really felt the burnout?
Probably 15 years. But the thing I realized after I had left was that I was really burnt out 2 years before. So I would say after 12, 13 years I was burned out. And I think a lot of that was because what I liked to do was make change, to push, to be on the front end of things. And there were several things that I did in large corporations that, were, not always seen as nice stuff. I was kind of always pushing the boundary. And so I think that wore me out a little bit faster than it might have other people.
So how do you know you were burnt out? I mean, what were the symptoms?
Well, technically, I was driving home from the gym about 1.5 years after I left my last job, and just said, I need to figure out how to be happy, because I was miserable. And I'm listening to a show on NPR, National Public Radio, and they're talking about something, and it's like, this sounds an awful lot like me. And I'm listening, and finally they said, well, the symptoms of burnout are, and I thought, ding, 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 that's me. I am like burned out, but I'm not just burned out, I'm like crispy fried burned out. I had those same sense of burnout in the last job I had before I even moved up to the Valley. So it was just, it was really bad. And it was time for me to leave. I was not productive for anybody.
Now in the UK, people work 40-hour weeks, maybe 60 hours and some more.
Right.
In the US, you guys work a bit harder. What kind of hours were you working weekly?
Oh, good Lord. It would vary, but I would say I would put in 9-10-hour days consistently. But it wasn't really the time. I really liked what I was doing. I think it was just the accumulation of just always having to push and push. Because I was somebody who was never satisfied with the status quo. Always had to change, because it could be better, right? Could do things faster, better, cheaper, right? So why not keep pushing for those things? But when you're pushing against the infrastructure of a big company and one person, it gets to be pretty exhausting after a while. And so I went through 5-6 companies before I finally said, okay, I'm done with this. So I pretty much exhausted all possibility of going on, and I realized I wasn't happy anymore doing that. And it was then that I said, okay, I got to figure out how to be happy again, and what is that going to be? So that's when we ended up starting the software company.
Coming over to you, Peter, so your journey, were you experiencing burnout, or was your journey slightly different?
Well, it was slightly different, but I was definitely ready for a change. So I've been working in big companies and then working in small companies as well. But the feeling that I had was that I wasn't in control. I was relying on somebody else doing it. I didn't really, didn't know then what I know now, and I was giving other people that control. So I was like, okay, I'm getting buffeted around here. How do I do it? So we just decided, well, we're not getting where we want to with working in these companies. Let's do it ourselves, because we think we know the answer.
So That's a big decision you made, which is both of you decided to start a company and both of you are breadwinners for the same household.
Exactly.
Right. Now, most people will be browning their pants at this point in time, of course. Usually it's one person or the other, so you took the plunge. What made you decide, right, this is worth the risk?
Basically, I didn't want to look back and wish I woulda. That's why I could jump. I think he was okay with it, but it was, I didn't want to look back and wish 10 years down the road that I wish I would have taken a chance to do this. So that was a big, and I knew I was miserable where I was before, so there was no way I was going to go back and do what I did. So
you're in Silicon Valley. You decide to set up a software company, which is the right place to do it if you're going to do it anyway, right?
Right.
Competition, isn't there a huge amount of competition? I mean,
Well, sure. I mean, there's competition where whatever industry or business you're going into, and of course, you create the competition by focusing on it. So we really were kind of novices and naive about going into this. We didn't think about all the things that could go wrong when we got started. We were really more focused on what could go right, and that's what our initial focus on. And we had the joy of jumping off, literally jumping off. We honestly decided, okay, we're ready to jump now. This is, put in my notice. She'd already been gone for a little while. We decided just to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are going to be watching, people who are working in the corporate field. Apologies to corporate employers, but this is going to be discussed. And some of them are going to want to jump. And with software, of course, it's very unpredictable because you start doing the research now, and 6 months later, maybe it's what you've decided was useful 6 months ago is now redundant. How did you manage to survive? I mean, I'm talking about financially. How did you survive, and how long did it take where you were purely in research mode?
Well, so what you just said there is you're not sure. Things change, right? So that's what we call pivot, right? And that's something that we had to do a number of times. The business we were going after to start with wasn't there by the time we built the product and started to come around to market it. It just wasn't there. And, so we had to change. We had to pivot a number of times to get there. That's just what you have to do in order to make it go. Doing it again, if we were to do it, and honestly, what we're doing now with the book is sort of like that, right? We didn't just all of a sudden quit our job and start writing this book. We've got our regular daytime job as well that's allowing us to do this. So we're still spending 20 hours or so a week on the book, but we're not full time doing it. So we didn't have to commit ourselves.
I think one of the things that's not really discussed much is there's really a significant incubation time frame to get a company off the ground. So people hear about these companies that just burst on the scene, but they've been out there for years. I mean, it's not months, it's years that you have to go in and you have to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And honestly, the academics is like diametrically opposed to entrepreneurship, just in so many ways. Corporate is not quite diametrically opposed, but you have a whole lot of resources that you're so used to tapping into that when you're out on your own, you don't have any of those things. Maybe you've got a network, which is really critical, but oftentimes if you're going into a different direction than where you were working in a corporate space, you have to build a whole new network, and that takes time. People have to learn about you and so forth. So, all those things that are in addition to building your product and then, improving it, because, it doesn't always work the first time, that's the stuff that takes the time, and that's what you don't see. People don't talk about that.
How did you keep yourself buffered, surviving? So you were doing part-time work at the time, or?
No, we were full-time in this. So we'd saved some money up and decided this is what we're going to do. We got some friends and family investments in there. So we were going down the path, and we talked quite a bit to potential venture capitalists. We decided we didn't need to go that way.
One of the things that happened was the Great Recession. That occurred just as we were starting to get into the marketplace. And so all the people who traditionally would have been there for money were rolling up their sidewalks. And so it was pretty much, okay, so we got to do this ourselves. And so we pretty much plowed ahead. But, it was it was our own checking account that was basically helping us fund this, bankroll it. So it was tough. I mean, I remember we were at coffee one Saturday morning and we got a call from his sister who was working with us remotely, and she said her paycheck bounced. And we're like, what? Well, the line of credit had been shut down because the bank that had our account was purchased by another bank, and they shut down all the lines of credit, near as we can tell. And so all the paychecks bounced because, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, your cash flow is king, right? But it goes like this. And so when that cash flow is like shut off, then you're gone. I mean, you can lose everything. And so I remember we had to go out and we had to pretty much fund payroll for a couple months out of our savings account. Well, that wasn't going to happen very long, so it was like kind of dicey there for a little bit. But you know, that's the life it is for years. It's not just something you can just kind of just go into.
So how do you decide to keep yourself going when the cash isn't coming in and you have to dip into your own private savings, which is really supposed to be there for you?
Right.
How do you know when to quit and when not to? Because you didn't quit, obviously.
Yeah, we didn't quit, and that honestly, there were a few times we thought about it, but it really wasn't. We never really said, okay, should we start quitting or should we start winding this down? I don't think there was any time, and you know, it took us quite a few years before we made traction, before we went anywhere, and then we started getting something, and then it was just enough to keep us going. But we never, I don't think we ever once said, okay, it's time to wrap this up.
Right. Because what were we going to go do?
So
this was going to be our retirement, so we had to make this a success. And I think that's one of the things that will separate what I call the true entrepreneurs from the wantrepreneurs, my name, is the people who have to make it work. And when you have to make it work, there's a very different perspective you have than if you've got something that you can fall back on. And that's why I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to, you know, think ahead a little bit, save some money, but just know if you're going to make it, you're going to make it, and you're going to make it. That's where that's why you can choose peace is so powerful, because the way you think about it makes all the difference.
And I remember there was a post from Y Combinator that says, a company never dies while you're still working.
Sure.
So if you still come into the office and you're still doing your work, you know, you're typing code or you're visiting potential customers or whatever, the company is not just going to shut down while you're still actively in it. So as long as you're still in it, it's still worth pursuing.
So when did you get this company started?
So we got the company started way back in 2004. So we decided that we were jumping off the bridge or off the cliff, basically, and get the company started. We had this great idea about, at that time, serial number tracking and RFID.
And how did that go?
Well, how much serial number tracking and RFID business do you think is out there? So it really didn't go anywhere. So I was familiar with a number of industries that did a good deal of serial number tracking, and they wanted to use RFID to make it happen. But the technology was never there, and the business, we could never really make enough of a business case to make it happen. But we struggled and pushed. We had a patent out there, all this kind of stuff to make it happen for the first couple of years. And then we pivoted.
Okay, so pivoted meaning you changed your mind.
What we did is we said, okay, we still want to be entrepreneurs. We want to make this a go. And this is a big mistake that entrepreneurs shouldn't do. They should figure out what business they want to be in and go after that and build a product to make it happen.
Right. Don't build a product.
That's right. Well, we ended up doing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Don't build a product and then go find a business.
Okay, that's interesting.
Find a business you want to be in and then build a product for that business, not the other way around.
Right, so this is a classic mistake that most wannabe entrepreneurs make, which is
or entrepreneurs, I mean, I will say, we made it.
Yeah, we're like someone want to learn coaching and they want to be a coach, but they don't know who to coach, or they make a widget.
Yes.
But maybe there's not a market. Okay.
For the widget, exactly. This is a huge thing. So we didn't do that to start with. We knew that there was a need for this. It wasn't as big a need as we want. But we did sell our product to some technology companies here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But then we said, okay, our technology is not going where we want it to. Where else can we apply it? And that's the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is, okay, where else do we have passion? What's an area where we have passion, that we understand the market well enough that we can pull together the technology and the people to go after it.
And so what market did you decide to go for?
So the next market we went into there was going after returns, because we were into tracking and serial numbers. So we talked to people and they said, yes, huge opportunity, billions of dollars of money that's lost through returns and warranties and repairs and all that. And it's true, it really is a huge market, but it's not a market that they want to invest in. So again, we missed the market a little bit there as well.
And what was the final market you decided to stick with and before you sold your company?
Yeah. So the market that we went into was built on some of the technology we had already, which was around information at what we call the point of decision. So when you're in a store, you figuring out this is before the cell phones came out, right? You wanted to figure out what you want to buy. We wanted to provide information for people to make the right decision, or maybe make the salesperson help you, or allow the salesperson to help you make the right decision. So we had these kiosks, basically, or technology within the store that helped people. And then we got a call from somebody that says, hey, can we use your technology that's already designed for working remotely in the retail store? Can we use it to create this thing called a micro market?
So can you explain a bit more about the micro market for those who don't understand, because this is totally new to me as well?
So a micro market. So imagine like a 7-Eleven with shelves with product on it and coolers with beverages and snacks and sandwiches inside. So what we were able to do is take the concept of this micro market, make it self-service, and put it into office buildings. So we replaced vending machines where people normally get their lunch and put in this little store. And it worked great.
It sounds like self-service also means there's a lot of trust involved. Like people sometimes get hungry and they don't have money on them, and they...
Well, that's where timing was key, because a recession was occurring in the States, and a lot of people were being laid off or were being threatened with layoffs. And when we put the first micro marts out there, they were being tested literally, this is something that we can work. Because everybody was concerned about losing their product, right? They didn't want to put stuff out on the shelves and it was always locked up in a machine. But we rationalized it around, if we put this stuff out there, this is the two of us rationalizing it, if we put this stuff out there on these shelves and people come in, are they going to want to lose their job over stealing a Snickers bar or piece of candy or a soda? Probably not. So the thing that's important about the micro marts is there's cameras that, it's an enclosed space. You can only get in with a badge reader or some kind of ID. So it's not just anybody walking through. But the cameras will track, 24/7, because they're open 24/7. There's nobody in there staffing it. It's just a kiosk. The people will come in to restock it, but, they're in and out. So the cameras would track, any kind of activity, as well as the software. You could tell certain things that came off of the software in terms of transactions, what was going on. So
yeah, and theft really wasn't an issue. So we went back and looked at the numbers, and it was like, just similar to retail, 2-3%.
Given the fact that the vending machine market is everywhere, schools and public places and private spaces, how did you manage existing competition? They've been there for decades.
Well, so the nice thing about it is they weren't our competition, they were our customers.
Yep.
I see.
So all those people that were basically breaking even by feeding vending machines and getting the coins out and all that stuff were able to put in our micro market and make a lot more money.
Oh wow, that's absolutely phenomenal.
Everybody made money, and that's something that we talked about early on. Is it's like a virtuous circle, in that everybody along the value chain makes more money than the way it is in the existing vending space, or as it was in the existing vending space. So all the people that stocked it, they'd make more money. The customers would be happier because they could get more products versus just chips and sodas. And then at the same time, the people who are actually making the products for these vending machines, they're starting to see an opportunity where they can make more money because they can sell more different products. So you go from a few SKUs to lots of SKUs.
So there's greater choice, and
Exactly.
and also it's like a proper full collaboration cycle.
Exactly.
And it's healthier,
Exactly.
right? Because instead of just eating the candy and the chips out of a box, you don't know how long that box has been there. Now you've got a cooler, and you can put a sandwich or a salad or
Gallon of milk.
or fresh fruit.
So they can choose.
Exactly. Just like in a store. Just like in a store.
You just pick it up, you look at it, and because you'll never buy an apple out of a vending machine.
Right.
But if you pull up an apple, you see it's fresh and it's you buy it.
Yeah. The other thing too, again, the recession is occurring at this point. So one of the things that companies have to spend a lot of money on are cafeterias. Well, a micro mart is really simple. You take a room, you put shelves up, you put food on it. You don't need a big stove or a dishwasher or anything like that. You just move stuff in and out. And, maybe you have trash cans and microwave and, freezer if you have like ice cream or something. But it's a lot less expensive. So you have these companies who are sizing down in terms of expenses, shutting down cafeterias, but they can pop up a micro mart very quickly, and it serves the same purpose, basically.
And so the company is what, US wide, or is it beyond that?
It's beyond that. So we started here in the US, but the product is being used in the UK right now. It's in Italy right now. It's in Canada right now. So we've got requests all over Asia as well.
And what made you decide to sell the company?
It was time.
It was exhausting to be an entrepreneur. We were tired.
Yeah, it was time. We've gone through this cycle. If you look at our life, right, we were big companies for a while. We started our own company for a while, and okay, we're in our 50s now, and it's time for the next adventure.
Yeah.
In any kind of company, you're going to get kicked where it hurts.
Yeah.
So where did it hurt most?
Well, it hurt near the end. The company is one thing, but your person's probably most important, and it's vital to surround yourself with people that you want to be around.
Right.
That is probably the most important lesson. So don't take an opportunity just because it might be financially beneficial or it might seem like a good idea at the time, but really surround yourself with people that you want to be with.
And that actually goes back to the very beginning. One of the things that's really tough is, you're starting a company, you have no money. I mean, maybe go raise money later on, but you still have to build something to sell or to, get something to invest in. So finding people that you trust, that you can work with, that are in the game and so forth, even though you can't really pay them much, that's a really, really tough spot to be in. And then along with that, giving out equity, and, every entrepreneur gives away way too much equity, but, when you look back on it, sometimes you're in a rock and a hard place, and you need to do that because you need that skill set that person brings. But then, who do you bring on board? The first few people are really key, and I think that's something that entrepreneurs don't really realize, because you have this need to get somebody in that has a certain skill set and you've got somebody available. It's like, oh, what can I do to bring that person in? But if they're not a good match, they can totally blow everything. So, there's customers you got to think about, who do you want to work with in terms of your sales and so forth. And sometimes you have choices, sometimes you don't. Same thing with employees. In fact, even more so with employees, because those people are with you. I would argue the same thing of investors. You're married to these guys. It's not like you can just say, okay, well, let's just go our separate ways. It doesn't work that way. So when you're an entrepreneur, you really need to think about who are the people that you want to be around, and what is it that's critical in those people that you need to have. And it's not just a skill set.